Chuck made me feel a little emotional there introducing me, even after I referred to him as Charles Frederick Funky III. I should say that in my family, there was never any discussion about a Virtus Norton II. And Dad told me one time when I was old enough to be a reasonably well-adjusted person that if I ever named one of my children Virtus, that he was going to write me out of the will. And I said, "What's that?" But Dad's name has been unique. I heard someone refer to, they were talking about someone the other day and they said, "Where's Dad?" There you are. And they said Virtus the other day, but it was spelled V-E-R-T-U-S. It's the first time I've ever heard Virtus. And I said, "You spell it wrong." I need to say something and ask you to join me in thanking and congratulating Chuck Funky for the remarkable CEO that he is for this company. Before you clap, let me just say this. He mentioned we've known each other for 15 years. We were colleagues and officers in the financial industry together. I've traveled the world with Chuck, both in that industry and here. And I can tell you this. You are led by a CEO who is filled with character and goodness. He's noble and humble and self-effacing and kind, and he's constantly looking to put attention on someone other than himself, evidenced by the strong emotion he feels by making sure that the employees get recognized. He pulled me aside and he said, "Tyler, you cannot single out any one employee in this company. They are all worthy of this recognition. They're working so hard." And you know what? That includes the CEO. So would you please join me in thanking Chuck for his goodness? Okay, this has been a journey, has it not? It's been amazing. We are so excited about where we are as a company, and I want to share some thoughts with you. I probably have more content than I can get through. I'm going to move quickly through some things, but I need to start with one concept first, and it's embodied in this simple thank you. Thank you to our global associate base. I don't think we can all acknowledge or recognize enough the fact that this is a global business. It's not a U.S. business only. It's a business that started here in the United States, but it must become global in every sense of the word. We must increase our awareness and understanding of the fact that we have technology and product and opportunity that deserves to be found everywhere in the world. I am so thankful that people would travel. I was talking to Jörg this morning, and he said, "Tyler, last night I met someone who traveled here by herself from the United Kingdom, who saved all year so she could be here." I don't know who you are, and if you're in this room, I want to say to you, thank you. Thank you for being a global associate with this company. I'm thankful and soft-hearted about the people that have come from Mexico or South America. We stayed late after our awards banquet last night and took pictures with them. They were so grateful to be here. I'm thankful for friends that we've made in Australia and New Zealand and loved watching them properly recognized last night for their contribution to this company. I am so humbled and grateful for the friends that we have all throughout Europe, dear friends without whom ASEA would not be what it is today without any question. Europe is dear to the heart of this company. North America, Canada, Mexico, and now, as you saw, expanding into Asia. How beautiful it was for us to see the recognition of the early Asian pioneers that are starting to take this opportunity and product to that region of the world. We are so thankful. And so I start my remarks today by saying this: we are a global company. And I thank you, each and every one of you, for being here from what part of the region you come from of the world. Please know you are welcome here, and we will do all that we can to represent ourselves as globally aware, globally sensitive, and truly embracing of all cultures, of all people, to help us with this great mission. Thank you so much for being here from all over the world. Last year in Convention 2016, I spoke about inflection points. I talked about inflection points, remembering that I worked for 17 years in the investment industry. When you talked about an inflection point, it typically meant you were speaking about a company that had hit a certain point in time when something unique happened, kind of like a turning point. And I altered the notion of an inflection point a little differently and said, what about lives? What about individuals and people? Can we have inflection points? What do they look like? I suggested a line or a curve that I drew, and then noted points on that particular line that matched my life. Now, this isn't perfect. I was sketching it out. But my point was to say to you that there are, in fact, inflection points in individual lives. You can stop and think back on the day you were introduced to this product or this company, or a family member or a close friend or associate that influenced you. I've always loved the notion of intersecting lives, and when you meet someone with whom you resonate and whose life and very being influences you to be or do better, you have come across a very powerful inflection point. It's a moment in time or a turning point when good things can happen. Now, I called out several of these in my life last year at convention, drawing attention to a third grade teacher that I had, Mrs. Knapp, and saying how grateful I was at a very early age for her influence and kindness in my life. I talked a little bit about 2 years I spent serving in Central America on an ecclesiastical mission, and the life-changing influence that was for me as a turning point or inflection point. I clearly referenced and talked about my lovely wife, who I believe is here. I love my wife with all of my heart, and meeting her was a massive inflection point, and to be sure, the single greatest inflection point for greatness in my life. She's inspired me and supported me. She is an incredibly noble and good person, and I want to say to you, Allison, how much I love you. Thank you so much for your support. These two pictures represent the child-rearing years for my lovely wife and I. She bore much more than I did in those years. We have 6 beautiful children, and each one brought rich happiness, and each one was a micro-inflection point in my life that has always gone up with happiness. I talked last year about meeting wonderful people in professional settings that helped me and inspired me to do and be better. This picture's a little dark on the bottom there, but that's Chuck and I, almost 15 years ago when we were first working together. You think about relationships you establish, you never know which of those relationships will become inflection points in your life. Lastly, I've talked about ASEA, finding the technology, which I'm going to spend a little time unpacking again today. And then rearing my family to its current state, just marvelous inflection points of happiness. And I think if you were to take some time and draw out your inflection points, you would find people, experiences, wonderful times in your life where you could say, this is where the difference was made. I used to write this acronym in my journal a lot called HAYMAD. And I've talked about this last year. It stood for me 2 things. Number 1 is I wanted to have an impact. No matter where I was, professionally, personally, in school, at home, and in my church, I've always had a desire in my heart, probably at times a little too crazy of a desire. I wanted to have an impact. I just didn't want to play it out. I wanted to know that when I got involved in something, it moved forward. And the MAD part of this stood for make a difference. And I used to write it in my journal a lot. Have an impact and make a difference. Have an impact and make a difference. I believe if you have a deep desire in your heart, things start to move around in the universe, and especially if you declare that desire, you'll have opportunities to have an impact and to make a difference. So as we talked about this last year, I also introduced this concept. Have you ever taken time to think back on your life and say, what if? What if Allison and I never met? What if we had never gotten married? What if that particular inflection point never happened? And I introduced the concept of, I think there's lots of us here that would draw a different line of our lives. We might say, I listened to Cesar this morning, and he said, if I'd never met Rosemary Skinner, what would happen to the curve of the last 4 years of his life? If Rosemary Skinner never came to ASEA, never met Virtus, what would happen to the curve of your life for the last 7, 8, 9 years, right? Very distinct, different curves. And we talked about the fact that when you fill in this difference, you start to understand that we live lives that are constantly uplifted by the impact and influence of someone else. And that understanding this notion of the difference is at the core of, I think, what we should be doing here at ASEA. We should be intersecting with people's lives in such a way that we have an impact and we make a difference. Now, these are my favorite things to have anyone say to me or about me. You have made a huge difference in my life. When someone says that to you, and by the way, at ASEA, people say this to one another a lot. You have made a huge difference in my life, or this concept of that has made all the difference. We talk a lot about that. And I took the notion of difference last year and took the Greek symbol for delta, which in mathematics and science means delta or change or difference. I talked about the fact that the delta or the difference in life, at least as it relates to life-changing products, opportunities, and culture at ASEA, happens most notably at the point that someone gets enrolled. In other words, our best intentions to talk about ASEA with people aren't enough. Getting someone into the middle of this is the moment when the engagement happens, the enrollment happens, and that becomes the potential for inflection. And I challenged a whole group of you here last year to consider the concept of doubling the difference. That is to say, recognizing that the point of enrolling someone into this unique opportunity, product set, and culture could become an inflection point for them, but that we needed to redouble our efforts in doing so. So we issued a challenge, and threw the challenge out that people that were willing to take this would be willing to consider just enrolling 2 or more people each month. Now, in exchange for that, I offered to do coaching every single month for the people that qualified, who enrolled and wanted to do this program. And I'm pleased to tell you that we finished a full year of this coaching program just a few weeks ago. If you look here on the board, the red section was the first June through August qualifying period, and then we had what was our 101 level course. The people that went then from September to November qualified for 201, and so on and so forth, all the way to this summer here, June through August, and Delta 401 was the last course. Well, what did we talk about? We shared several different things. We shared Strategic Link, which is my father's proprietary strategy planning process. We talked about success mapping, cause and effect on how you can succeed. We talked about how to stay engaged and in flow, and even put a You Are Here map together that I've shared in various trainings. This is actually a picture of one of the participants' plans. This is a strategic plan my dad would be proud of. This is an actual document of strategy. And these documents are informing 3-year, 1-year, and even quarterly plans. And all of this came, let me go back here, sorry. All of this came as a result of the training that we did. Now, I would be remiss today if I did not take a moment and acknowledge those people that participated in any way in this effort over the last year. In the past couple of weeks, I've asked to get all of the data and numbers in, and there have been thousands of new enrollments into this company by virtue of these people and their efforts. So the other night, we pulled together our group. Not everyone was here, but these people made it all the way through to the 401 level of qualification. That is to say, they were enrolling 2 people or more, 6 or more a quarter, every month since last year. And many of them, as you might imagine, notably more than that. We got together and we thanked each other because we had spent time together every single month this last year training and developing ourselves to stay focused on doubling the difference. This last picture on the bottom right is of Sean and Veronica Burke, who led the charge with the most number of enrollments in this whole group. If you qualified at any level for a 101, 201, 301, or 401 level Delta class, would you please stand and let's give you all a round of applause for your efforts from last year. Excellent work. Congratulations. I'd like to pivot, if I could, from inflection points now to reflection points. One of my favorite things to do before preparing a talk for convention is I go into my office, oftentimes it's on a Saturday, and I just sit and I reflect and I think. I process the experiences I've had in the last year. I process what you're about to experience at convention. and I sit and reflect. And what I'm going to share with you today is a journey, not so much that I hope just you go on, but it's a journey I've been on over the last several weeks and months. I've been reflecting. I've been trying to make sense of everything that's happening here. I know my dad does. I've been trying to make sense of 31 countries coming online here in the next few months, total 31 countries, and still going. I'm trying to make sense of the things that Terry Latham said about distribution centers dotting the world. And I'm going to take you back today on a little bit of a reflective, introspective journey for me, if you will, and connect the dots on conviction, clarity, and confidence for all of you that are here. Now, I must say, I love Karen Riley. I'm grateful for her leadership. And when we introduced the concept yesterday, all we were trying to do was tease out for you just a little bit of the notion of what's the relationship for me and my success to conviction and clarity and confidence. I agreed with Odman this morning that there's way more going on around decisiveness and other elements, but I want to zoom in on these today and invite you just to sit back and reflect a little bit on where you are personally in these three areas. Now, to do that, I'd like to tie each one of these to a simple concept. Some of them you've heard before, but each of them I will twist just a little differently today to connect the dots between these three things. So conviction, I'd like to talk just a little bit about how this started. I won't take you through an extended element of it, but I need to revisit how this started today, because what's happening right now in ASEA, for me, I cannot make sense of without looking backwards and reflecting on how we got started. I'd like to talk about clarity, but I'm going to use a part of our ethos, which is a children's book. And if you'll give me permission, I'm going to treat you all like you're going to bed, and I'm going to read you a children's book today that I've shared several times from the stage. And I'm going to connect the dots on that with you, and it's called The Three Questions. And lastly, I want to revisit this notion of inflection points. I want to talk to you about it again, but I want to pivot it from an inflection point that's personal to an inflection point that lives inside of what I believe is ASEA today, right now. So let's start. I want to talk a little bit about conviction. Okay. You need to understand that Dad and I and all the people associated with the early stages of ASEA were not setting out to create a network marketing company. It's important that you understand that. If you have as a father a retired Fortune 50 officer of strategy with the kind of background and experience that he has, everybody could use or wants more money, but I can tell you this, my parents live in the same house. My dad largely eats the same food, and he drives a very similar, if not the exact same car. Nothing's really changed for him. He was successful before and financially stable before. He is so today. What happened was we bumped into a technology that we didn't expect to find. No one in our family believed beyond my father that it would become what this is today. And that's why it's the contrast of where it started from to events like this are so difficult for me to process. You see, you're joining this potentially in the last year. Many of you raised your hand and became Rocky Balboas today with Justin and saying you were here just the last year. But we've been watching this happen for many years. And I need you to understand where it came from. I think it will create context that's meaningful for you and fills in some blanks. My father and I were asked to do a strategic consulting session for a small biotech company in northern Utah. I mentioned to you that my father ran strategy for Kraft Foods. I like to think of my dad as the right-hand man to the then CEO of a $36 billion worldwide company. My father had worked with this gentleman for many years, and together they had identified strategic planning processes that were simplified and practical and streamlined. He taught those to me at a young time in my career, and I started to apply them, and I started to see success using them. And we were asked, got referred by a friend to go meet with a small company in northern Utah. I called my father, and he had just finished an assignment running a biotech company. And so it made sense. He had freedom of time. He's the Jedi master of this strategy process. And so I said, hey, do you want to go with me to meet this company? And we went together. More than 10 years and millions of dollars had been invested in this small biotech company in development, research, and patent work. But they were struggling. They were struggling. They hadn't really figured out exactly what they had, and they were struggling financially. Now, I was in the room with the CEO and CFO of this company, and they told us they were developing 2 products for the pharmaceutical industry, and they had one very intriguing product that was made from salt and water. As they got to know my dad, they were impressed with his background, and they said, "We'd like to invite you to sit on our board of directors." And my dad said, "I'm struggling a little bit with this saltwater product thing. I think I need to see some research first." Now, let me remind you, Dad had recently been running a biotech company, so he knew what to look for. So they gave him a box of research, and he began the process of vetting a bunch of stuff at the house. Now, to be candid, at the time, I was a senior officer of a financial company. I sometimes went and did some work on the side, almost as an avocation, a hobby. I loved it. I loved talking to businesses about their problems and challenges. Dad had since been retired like 10 times. He's now been retired like 20 times. It's a problem. You need to look into it. And actually, it's a problem for my mom, isn't it, Mom? You need a break from that guy. My father took this research home and started calling universities. He called UCLA. He called Indiana University. He called Harvard University, different organizations that had been doing research on these products for this company. And what did he learn? He learned that the research was valid, that they had something, that it was legitimate. He accepted a position to sit on the board and quickly realized that they were in a little bit of financial trouble. Now, I came to the house and I find my dad with a bunch of books open on his desk. And this is several weeks later. And I say, "Hey, what are you doing?" He says, "Do you remember the little company we went to?" I said, "Sure." This is exactly what he said to me. He goes, "Tyler, I don't think they know what they have. They've got something amazing here. This shouldn't be happening." He said, "According to this research, it does this, this, and this, but it doesn't do this, this, and this." And they were good things, and bad things that shouldn't happen weren't happening. He said, "I don't think they know what they have here." So I kind of dismissed it because, by the way, it was salt and water. And I'm being real with you. And I have said in the past, when a 69-year-old dad from Salt Lake decides to start a company with salt water, you may want to just think about it, right? I went to the house the next time. This didn't help. Dad's down in the basement. I go downstairs, and he has a machine on the counter. And he has a clear mason jar of fluid. Now, if you're from the South and someone has a clear fluid in a mason jar, any guesses on what that might be? So I have my now very intelligent, very capable, very accomplished father downstairs in the basement, and I swear this is what he looked like for just a minute. I even think he referred to that machine as a flux capacitor. But this is what it was like. This is what was happening. There were no beautiful conventions or anything. We're in our house. He's in the basement. He's got a machine and a fluid. And then, of course, he hands it to me and says, "Drink this." And that's when you go Control, Alt, Delete, like, I'm out of here. Okay. I affectionately started to refer to this as the stuff. This was the stuff. There was no name for this. This was the stuff. And it didn't help much, and this is true as true, and you can even see this in the production facility, that right here where the arrow is on the screen, I've covered this up, it said jewelry cleaner. Dad, look at me right now. Is that true or false? That's true. It said jewelry cleaner. Now help me out with that. So you've got your dad with a clear fluid mason jar made from salt water. You're close to Salt Lake. He's got this flux capacitor on the desk. His hair is coming off of his head. And this is what it says, jewelry cleaner. When he's telling me to drink it, I say, "I can't." I said, "What is the jewelry cleaner?" He says, "Just disregard that." Okay, sure. Apparently, by the way, when they sent this machine, Dad, to Asia, they sent it over and they didn't want the customs people to get concerned and rip into it. So they tried to head fake the customs and just put jewelry cleaner on it just so they wouldn't look at it. Well, that didn't help his source credibility at the time, right? All right, so let's talk about my genesis a little bit. I've shared this story a gazillion times. I'm sharing it again. I went to church. I'm sitting in a church meeting, and we're talking about the general welfare of the members of our congregation. The bishop, who is a lay minister, he just volunteers his time, sits down, and I can see that he's heavy-hearted. He's concerned. And he says, there's a member of our congregation that is not well. And he says his name was Jason, and I immediately start to think about Jason, who lives just a few doors down from me. He says, he's not well. And we sat and counseled together. You know those meetings where you say, what could we do to help this family? We talked about taking in meals to the house. And by the way, just to put this in kind of degrees of difficulty, he had been told to go home and enjoy the time that he had. That's how bad things had gotten for him. He had been all over the world trying to resolve a challenge, and basically had been told, go home and enjoy your family. So I remember coming home from this meeting and being concerned, and really don't remember much else that day we talked about, but I do remember Jason. And what comes into my mind? The jewelry cleaner, the stuff. We got some stuff here. We got options. So I call my dad, and to his everlasting credit, this is one thing about my dad. I've often said my dad may be wrong, but he's not in doubt. And as a teenager, that's a huge problem. In fact, let me restate that. My dad is often wrong, but he's never in doubt. I'm having fun up here. You don't even have a mic, Dad. You can't even defend yourself. And look at my mom. She's giving a standing ovation right now. This is fantastic. I got the stuff, right? But where am I on this continuum? This is a continuum I think a lot about. I'm squarely in two places. I'm in fear and I'm in doubt. Like, are you kidding me? The stuff can't help, Jason. It's the stuff. It's moonshine mixed with jewelry cleansing something. But when you have a friend like Jason, and I don't want to purport that Jason and I were best buddies, we were neighbors. But I knew his kids were about the same age as mine, some of them, and I thought a lot about that. And so I called my dad. And I said, Dad, I just came from a church meeting, and one of my neighbors is really struggling. Do you think this stuff would help? You know what my dad said? No hesitation. Of course it will. I said, how can you be so sure? How do you know that this isn't going to make things worse? Who knows what things he's currently doing to address his challenge? How do you know? Now, where was I on the continuum? Fear and doubt. And oh, by the way, they're kissing cousins, so I was back and forth between both of them. I couldn't tell the difference. Nevertheless, I said, what do I have to lose? And my good dad, with the flux capacitor in his basement, made 5 gallons of the product for me to take. Now remember, I'm a senior vice president of a 100-plus-year-old financial institution. I have absolutely no idea that this is going to happen. I just know I have 5 gallons of some unknown product in the back of my car that I've got to somehow convince a guy to try and take. So being the intelligent human being that I am, I resolve to actually take this container to the leader of the church. And his name is Craig. And I said to Craig, I have something that will help Jason, but I'm not going to give it to him. You are. And he says, are you kidding me? And I said, nope, you're going to take it. Now, listen to these questions he asks. What is it? I don't know. What does it do? I don't know. Why should he take it? Because my dad said it might help. And last question, why am I taking it over to him? Because you're a church leader and you're supposed to help people. Now, do these questions look familiar to you? These were the first messaging questions of my life, and I failed miserably. Chris, I failed. You would not recruit me. Now, you know what one of the great miracles for me of ASEA is that Craig took the 5 gallons, walked across the street, knocked on the door of Jason's home, and set it down and said, "Drink this." Miracle number 1. Miracle number 2, Jason, with reasonable intelligence, decides to drink it. All right, what do you do at this point? Well, for me, I did my church duty. I thought of him, I thought of the stuff, I got him the stuff. I can lead the horse to the water, but it's his deal now, right? And to be honest, I kind of thought, I don't know what else to do. It's better than a casserole, right? During the coming weeks, I started hearing words like this: redox signaling molecules, or cellular communication. They were starting to unpack the stuff, redox biochemistry. I even had a meeting with one of our early associates who said this could potentially be the single greatest health science breakthrough of our lifetimes. Now, there was no, do you agree with that? That's easy to clap now. Now, another important thing happened. During this window of time, my father had since acquired the technology and has an opportunity to sell it off. And bless his everlasting heart, and I mean that sincerely, with no cynicism, my father chose not to sell. And for that reason, you're sitting here today. It's funny to watch. My kids are sitting right behind their grandpa, and they're just laughing, like, why are all these people clapping for grandpa? Okay, 3-4 weeks later, I don't remember, a month later, I get a call from Craig. Exact words, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "What's up?" He says, "I just got off the phone with Jason." And he says, "That's why I'm calling. His situation is improving." Do you notice how compliant my language is, by the way? Be compliant. His situation is improving. What am I waiting to hear? Did he drink the stuff? He says, "That's why I'm calling. He drank all of it, and he wants more of it." You see, I am a good network marketer, Chris. You might still recruit me. By the way, my approach to Craig, to go from Craig to Jason, is in fact network marketing. I spoke to Craig and said, "I'm not gonna tell him, you're gonna tell him," and then he told him. So just for the record, Rosemary, I have the stuff, like a different kind of stuff. All right, so here's what's happening. I hang up the phone and my mind is spinning, and this is what's going through my mind. Whoa, 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 whoa. What if? What if? And I start playing a ping pong match on this continuum. I introduce a new space on this moving continuum. It's called hope. I start feeling and thinking like, whoa, wow. But as you can imagine, the arrows signify I'm going between hope and doubt and back and forth pretty quickly. I'm like, no, how can you tell me that? I mean, there's 1,000 other reasons that things could be improving. How do you know? Now, on this particular continuum, hope is an interesting thing. Because in my case, born of a single experience, one experience, I was willing to entertain the possibility that something was really happening here. I hate to tell you that I shuddered to call my dad and tell him that he was right, because that only adds to a very serious, long-standing, almost decades-long problem of him being right or believing he's right, and me being the son. But I called him and said, "This is going on," and he said, "I told you." Now, before I was gonna roll over to his omniscience, I decided to try to have more experiences, because this is one hash mark on the bottom of my screen. Dad starts asking me to help get involved in the building early stages of this. I'm still employed somewhere else. And as I start to speak to people, by the way, I have spoken to thousands and tens of thousands. I was doing the math over the years. But at the end of these meetings, you know what would happen? Jason would come up. Another Jason. Now, parenthetically, I went to Jason and said, hey, I gave the stuff to Craig that Craig gave to you. And I was a little embarrassed about it. And I said, can you tell me what's really happening here? And he said, do you know what I think you've done for me? That's exactly what he said to me. He said, do you have any idea what I think you've done for me? And you know what my answer was back then? I don't. Can you tell me? And he proceeded to tell me what I've now heard along with my siblings and my parents and many of you, not just 5 times, not just 10 times, not just 15 times. In fact, not 20 times. What's happened now is what I'm going to show you next. Let me show you this. I have here a binder. This feels like the 100-yard dash. This is an actual binder stolen from my dad's office at his home. Just kidding, Dad. But in this binder are actual letters, pictures, and stories sent to my dad's inbox, even some of them handwritten like you can see here. Every time Dad and I traveled somewhere and someone came up to him and said, you need to hear this, I need to tell you this, he would say, can you send that to me? And no, it's not compliant. I'm not handing it around for you to look at. But here's my point. This experience binder started to create the conditions where hope and doubt were no longer in a civil war. We had enough in that binder, enough personal experience. With the early leaders in this company, they would call my dad, or we would go do a meeting together, and they would say, did you hear this story or this story? And pretty soon the experience binder started filling in. I should also tell you one other thing as a bit of a foreshadowing. I'm not going to show it to you, other than to say at the very front of this is a table of contents. This is classic Virtus Norton. Dad has started to collate and organize the stories into broad category headings. He's starting to see different patterns emerge. He's a strategist, and he's using critical thinking. He's like, wait a minute, look at all the stories that match up that look like this. So as the binder is building, our experience is starting to grow. Fear and doubt are starting to fade. What happens now is we're not really talking about the fear and doubt things. The stuff concept kind of goes away. And now we're living in this really interesting space where hope and experience is blending in with this form of belief. This is an interesting triangle. Hope, belief, and experience, if you want my opinion, have carried this company all the way from its inception to right now. Real hope, belief, and experience. These hash marks in this story, they're real. These aren't hash marks like some notch. These are real families, real people, real Jasons. And we have them. So you can imagine if my talking points today are reflection-oriented, where this might be going. Because for me, I started to actually process that hope, belief, and experience would lead you to action. There is no intelligent action unless hope and belief precede it. You wouldn't even get up this morning and come here if you didn't believe you'd make it. Belief precedes all meaningful action. And belief is normally informed and affirmed by what? By experience. If I got up every day and made it to the meeting, I have pretty good reason to believe I'm going to make it to the next days of meetings. Now, can you imagine what is going through my mind a few months ago when this happens? When research starts to come out, can you imagine? I want you to process when I'm sitting in a room with a bunch of PhDs telling me the research you've now learned, and I'm reflecting back on the jewelry cleaner and the moonshine and the stuff. And I'm comparing and contrasting. Can you imagine what's going through my mind when I start to see and understand, circled up there, 5 key areas where this is causing genetic expression, signaling genetic activity, and guess what it correlates with? Right here, it correlates with my dad's table of contents. I can show it to you in this book. My dad's calling out cardiovascular. He's calling out autoimmune. He's calling out digestive, and he has all the stories. And I'm sitting with him in a meeting 3, 4, 5 months ago, listening to this for the first time, and I have goosebumps. I still have them right now. And I'm going, wait a minute. This is connecting the dots. Wait a minute. What happens in that moment to me is a new place emerged in my own continuum. And this is my journey, folks. This is mine. I started to see and understand and know something. And now knowing something and believing something are very close to each other, kind of like fear and doubt, but they're not the same. And what emerged from this new place was a new triangulation of believing and knowing in action. Now something new is occurring. A whole new space is occurring between these two triangles. Hope, belief, and experience got us here. We are now adding, at the most strategic and critical time for this company, I might add, the knowledge from this science. Now I'm sitting by myself in that beautiful new building on a Saturday. There's not a soul in the building. And I'm drawing this on a piece of paper and I'm going, I cannot believe this. This is amazing. I have this binder open and I'm flipping through it. And my heart, I can still feel it. I'm feeling gratitude and I'm feeling humble and I'm feeling like, is this really connecting the dots? I'm reading stories from 2011 that I can point to this research and say, this is real. I love cause and effect. I love connecting dots. I love thinking why something is the way it is. And I started to think about this beautiful triangulation of hope, belief, affirming and punctuating experience, enriched with knowledge now, informing action. And I started to think, you know what? This is a whole new basis for conviction. This is why I started with conviction today, guys. We are in a whole new place. The dots have been connected. And bless my dad's heart, he saw this stuff way early. And you know what? He's maybe wrong, but he's not in doubt. Well, Dad, you were right. And Mom, I'm so sorry I had to say that. I know it. Don't leave. Now, do me a favor. Put this knowledge in its proper context. You are not on trial. Our product is not on trial. That binder married with that research is the end of the discussion. And it enables the next thing I want to talk about. It enables now for us to move to a place of clarity. Now, I told you I was going to share a kid's story. Do you give me permission to go fast? There were plenty of nights when I sat in a rocking chair with some of my kids and I even skipped a page. I'm so sorry to say that because I was trying to get them to bed. I'm going to go quick with your blessing. Part of our ethos, which is the defining spirit of our company, is embedded and embodied in this simple story. It's called the 3 questions. How many in the room have ever heard of it or seen it? Good, way more than half have not. So those of you that have heard it will oblige me here. It's basically a story of a little boy named Nikolai who was very uncertain about the right way to act. He wanted to be a good person. He told his friends, but he said, I don't always know the best way to do that. Nikolai's friends understood and they wanted to help. But he said, if I could just find the answer to my 3 questions, then I'd always know what to do. So he posed his 3 questions. Number 1, when is the best time to do things? Number 2, so who is the most important one? And number 3, what is the right thing to do? So he set out and asked his friends. He had a heron friend who said, best time to do things, you can't even say it. You got to plan way in advance. The monkey says, who really you'll see in just a minute, doesn't really care and says, watch and pay close attention as a coconut is now falling to hit his head. Do you see it? And the dog, of course, the political character says, you need a pack to help you know when the best time. You can't figure that out on your own. So he thought for a moment and posed the second question. So who's the most important one then? The bird, the heron says, those closest to heaven, a metaphor for the notion of those that do what I can do are the most important ones. The monkey, now keenly aware of his new situation after the monkey has hit his head, the most important one's the one to meet my need now. My need, selfish. The dog, the political character says, look, the ones you got to get close to are the ones making the rules, because then you got a shot. Well, third question, what's the right thing to do? Bird says, do what I do, fly. Monkey says, quit worrying about stuff, just have fun. And the political character that travels in packs, the dog says, it's fighting. Well, as you can imagine, Nikolai wasn't entirely convinced those were the right answers. He loved his friends. He knew they were doing their best, but the answers just didn't feel or seem quite right. And an idea came to him. He says, I know what I'm going to do. I'll ask Leo the turtle, lives high up in the mountains. He'll know the answers I'm looking for. He's an old sage turtle. So he hikes high up where the turtle lives alone and finds him. And when Nikolai gets there, Leo, the old turtle, the sage, wise turtle, is digging in his garden. And he's tired. Nikolai comes and says, hey, I have 3 questions for you. When's the best time to do things? And who's the most important one? And what's the right thing to do? Well, as they were sitting there, Leo was listening, but went on with his digging. And finally, Nikolai wisely and kindly said, you must be tired, so let me help you a bit. The turtle hands over the shovel. He's tired, sits down on the rock. And because it was much easier for a young boy with more redox signaling molecules, I might add, in his body, Nikolai kept on digging until the rows were all finished. So the young boy finishes tilling the garden. Now, as they finish the garden, a storm rolls over the mountains. Gets dark. They run to the cottage for shelter, but Nikolai, the young boy, hears a cry for help in the distance. And lo and behold, running down the path, he finds a panda whose leg has been injured by a fallen tree. He picks up the panda, carries her back to the turtle's home, makes a splint for her leg with a stick of bamboo, and gets her into a warm bed. As she comes to and wakes up, she says, where am I and where's my child? And at that moment, Nikolai, realizing, runs out of the cottage, down the path, through the storm, pushing against the wind and all the rain. Deep into the forest, he finds the panda's child, cold and shivering there by itself on the ground. The panda's wet and scared, but alive, and so he brings her back inside, makes her warm and dry, and lays her in her mother's arms. And this is my favorite illustration in this kid's book. Leo smiled when he saw what the boy had done. The next morning is a beautiful day. Warm sun, birds are singing, all is well with the world. The panda's leg is healing nicely. She thanked Nikolai for saving her baby and her from the storm, and at that moment, Nikolai's friends make their way up to the top of the hill, and they arrive to make sure everyone's okay. And then Nikolai felt great peace within himself. He had wonderful friends, and he had saved the panda and her child, but he also felt a little disappointed. He still had not found the answer to his 3 questions, and so he asked Leo the turtle one more time. And as you might imagine, the turtle wisely says, but your questions have in fact been answered. They have? Asked the boy. He said this, yesterday, if you hadn't stayed to help me dig my garden, you wouldn't have heard the panda's cries. Therefore, the most important time was the time you spent digging the garden. The most important one at that moment was me. And the most important thing to do, the 3rd question, was to help me with my garden. Later, when you found the injured panda, the most important time, 1st question, was the time you spent mending her leg and saving your child. The most important ones were the panda and her baby. And the most important thing to do, the 3rd question, was to take care of them and make them safe. And then this beautiful moral of the story. Remember then that there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you're with. And the most important thing to do is to do good for the one who is standing at your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what is most important in this world, and this is why we are here. Just a quick side note, I first found this book on the desk of my dearest friend who had passed away. 42 years old, I was asked to speak at his funeral. I came to his home, and there, sitting on his desk, almost like he left it there for me. Here's an extremely successful businessman. He had his Bible, his journal, and he had the 3 questions. And it's from that moment that I read the book and learned of it and decided we needed to live by those 3 questions. Now, something interesting here. The 3 questions, as you can see as I've boxed here on the front page, is based on a story by Leo Tolstoy. Well, who is Tolstoy? Tolstoy is the 19th century literary giant. He's a Russian philosopher and moralist and one of the great literary giants of his day. He was revered in Russia. He was looked up to at the later years of his life as a man of the people. He wrote what many argue to believe is some of the greatest novels of all time, War and Peace, Anna Karenina. I'm probably not saying that the way my son would, who speaks Russian. And he was a very interesting moral philosopher. So here's what I was thinking about this last Saturday as I was looking at him. I said, wait a minute. Here's Tolstoy, this incredible moral philosopher. In the end of his life, he completely denounced aristocracy. In fact, that shirt that he's wearing is a peasant's shirt in Russia. The only clothing he would wear at the end of his life. In fact, he had a correspondence going within the last years of his life with Mahatma Gandhi. They both agreed on so many principles. He was a man who believed in this philosophy. What is the 3 Questions book? It's moral philosophy. But interesting thought process occurred to me. I can guarantee you if you and I went out for tea with Leo Tolstoy in 1900, we would have had a very deep conversation about moral philosophy. Might have even been complex, and we might have even got lost a little bit. But the complex can be made to be simple, and it can be made to be clear. And if ever there's evidence of that, read a kid's book called The 3 Questions that was born of a short story written by Tolstoy. And then this, listen to this quote. The surest sign of the truth is simplicity and clarity. Is that not the most beautiful thing you've ever heard? The surest sign of the truth is simplicity and clarity. And I sat at my desk and I thought, I cannot believe this. The 3 questions are no different. When is the best time to do things? Who is the most important one? What is the right thing to do? Well, what if I just change those? What is it? What does it do? Why do I need it? Aren't those simple, clear questions too? Aren't they coming from something reasonably complex? And can't we get by teaching the complexity in a very simple way? And so I sat pondering the relationship between the 3 questions, the kids' book, teaching us that now is the time. And the most important one is the one you're with. And the most important thing to do is to do good for them. But then I started thinking about 3 simple questions like this about our product. If this is true, then what Justin put up yesterday is very important for our success moving forward. We have been working from complex to simple. We must no longer do that. If we hope to have duplication and momentum in this organization equal to the potential, we must begin with the simple and stay there. Simplicity and clarity are the surest signs of the truth. And so now on, as you think of the 3 questions as part of our ethos, I want you to think of the simplicity and clarity of asking very simple questions and answering them in a consistent, fact-based way. It can be done. Will you do that? Okay, let's talk about my last point, confidence. And why would I choose this notion of inflection points? Well, let's look at what's really happened here. If you went back and were speaking with a team member that for whatever good reason couldn't make it to this event, and they asked you this question: what happened at the ASEA 2017 Global Convention? Let me help you. Many of you know that I have a problem. I have to see things on one page. I don't like 50-page documents. I like all one page. Look at the ASEA ethos. It's all on a pinwheel. So I'm going to give you one. You ready? What happened at the ASEA Global Convention? Well, our company finished an over 2-year project to create a whole new campus for us as distributors to bring people that need to know about this so they can feel confident and stable and convicted and really sure that who they're joining are an organization here to stay. Oh yeah, and it's just a mile away from a 40,000 square foot facility where their products are made. Step one. Let's keep going. What happened at the convention? Our CEO gave a beautiful, a masterful update on our mission as an organization, our vision, and our strategies, and made the connection between strategy as foundational for our growth. He went through each of the strategies, talking in depth about resources and plans that have been laid for better part of 24 to 36 months to get to this day. Millions of dollars have been spent and zoomed in even on the IT transition, which cannot be spoken of enough. Despite the small challenges that still exist, we would not be able to fulfill our full potential as a company without the update that Chuck gave us on these strategies. Strategy is where you spend your money. And there have been resources spent here, significant resources to create foundational advantage for you. And Chuck did a masterful job, in my opinion, updating you on that to kick off the meeting. What next? Well, Jerem Webb came out and blew us all away with this research summary. He taught us about the law of diffusion of innovation and where disruptive technologies come into marketplaces. He taught us all that it's important to recognize we are still an early market technology, disruptive, but early market. And after 7 or 8 years, we have yet to see our equal of any kind in the marketplace. I used to think for sure somebody was coming on the chessboard in this space. And aside from some very small, insignificant players that have tried, nobody has the 4 squares at the center of the chessboard. Nobody. We still own them. He talked about the chasm and the need for us to bridge the chasm, and then he introduced us to the study results. I want to really make sure you took this away. Every participant, every one of them, met with results of expression in genetic activity the same, every one of them. And every one of them, when they stopped and were tested just a few weeks later again, removed the lift in expression back to the baseline they started with. Every single one of them. Do you understand that? There's a metaphor in business that's often used that said it pulls from a metaphor in ice hockey. Here's the metaphor. You don't skate where the puck is, you skate to where the puck is going. The concept is that you need to understand where things are going in hockey. If you're constantly going to where the puck is, you're going to miss the whole game. Do you understand that we're not only skating to where the puck is, we are the puck? Elevating the name Redox to the actual bottle and to the product is an important distinction that happened because Redox is going to be big. Did you hear Ann-Louise Gittleman? Did you hear her saying, you're at the front? Did you hear Dr. Mockney yesterday saying, you guys are actually a little ahead of your time? Well, when time starts to catch up and science starts to catch up, our job is to make sure that we have a very significant multi-lap lead. And we do. We must keep the RPMs up on us owning the space of redox. We have to get it out fast and worldwide so that when someone assimilates the word redox, it's like Q-tip is to cotton swab. We have to be what they think of when they hear redox, they think of us. And we're on our way to do that. Incredible part of this convention. Well, wouldn't it stand to reason that 80% of the revenue that comes to this company comes on the basis of that incredible product, that we should relaunch it and properly position it with new messaging, new tools. And Jerem did a phenomenal job of that. Let me back up and show you this slide again. He introduced flavors, which I'm going to remind you as a pilot, we need your feedback on that if it's something you think is helpful. We were amazed to realize we had a very short window of time where that would not denature the product, and thought if it helps you to sell it and helps you to move it forward, then live the mission, let's do it. We changed the way the product was made after 2 years of testing so that we can extend shelf life. It's material as you move into new regions of the world. It helps us and it helps you. Repositioning the product, my brother said to me the other morning, John was sitting with me at a breakfast. We were going through a preview of some things. He read the bottle, and Jerem mentioned this in his presentation. John slid the bottle to me and he said, you know what you just did? You just put a presentation on a bottle. And he's right. Okay, what else? Well, Justin came out and brilliantly positioned the simplicity of the messaging I talked about a minute ago. How many of you will ever forget holding up and listening to toilets flush yesterday and waving colored wands in the air? I mean, who's going to ever understand that? But he made a great point. He burned it into your heart and mind that we should simply say we are the light switch that's turning on these 5 areas. That's it. You don't need to tell anybody how the iPhone works. It works. Just tell them those 5 things and move on. I thought his presentation covered something very, very important for us that we've been missing for a long time. And that is a simple, common message that we have 50,000 variations in the marketplace right now. Everybody's attacking it. And you know where they're attacking it from? The complex philosophy side as opposed to the simple 3-question side. And that's why when Becky came out and positioned the tools the way she did, I thought it was a brilliant way for us to stay simple. We had a debate, a philosophical conversation, Becky and I talking about this, and I could feel that there was real common harmony between the way we were talking, because she was saying, hey, listen, we've got to completely invert the process so that we're speaking about things from simple and then allowing the very small few who would like the complex to find it. So that's why the brochure and even the bottle itself are at the lowest level of simplicity and will be enough for 90.x of whatever the group is. But somebody who wants to double click in can unpack this further. And what will be there? An ASEA REDOX video, a redox gene study summary if they want it, the actual study itself if they want to go through it. Do I think you should use that? For a very, very small percentage that need that. The rest of you should confidently and with the conviction I talked about say, this is what it is, this is what it does, and this is why you need it. Awesome stuff. This was super exciting, was it not? Amazing. To those of you from the Dominican Republic, from Colombia, from Poland, from Thailand and Hong Kong and the Philippines, from Singapore, I feel great emotion. Thank you for coming to this convention, and thank you for what you're about to do. We know what's going to happen, and we are going to continue to grow, and this is not about you. It's about somebody in Poland that needs this product. Someday, I think we'll all look back and realize this was not about us. This was about people truly looking for a solution they can't find. We have to find them. And the bringing on of these countries is fulfillment of my dad's vision to take ASEA around the globe. We're so excited to have you. Okay, starting to get a feel of what happened at this convention. You were here. If I was seeing this thing, I'd be like, wow, this is a pretty amazing outline. I would be remiss if I didn't suggest and say that I would add, we got an update on a foundation, and we as a group raised $200,000 to make a difference in the world and do good things. Now what do you have? Well, think about it. You've got a new building, a completely updated strategy that shows how foundation is leading now to growth mode. We have new science. We have an ASEA REDOX relaunch. We have a new message that's simplified and clear. We have new tools in support of that. We have new countries that we're going into. And we're making a big difference foundationally with an impact that's doing good things around the world. Is that a pretty cool little summary look on what we've done? Well, here's what I'd like to invite you to remember. If I took the center of this out and left it blank, I want you to think about this moving forward. What should come to your heart and mind is this. This one single page should fill you with the notion of confidence. It should fill you with the sense that we have an organization and a team, senior executive leadership, and founding vision that is aligned with the potential of this product and opportunity and culture. You should breathe through your nose and out through your mouth and go right on. Do it. Ready? Ready? Right on. Are you kidding me? Step off of this page. This is serious stuff. This should give you confidence. This should give you deep, abiding confidence. That confidence should take its rightful place in connection with conviction and clarity. They're all kissing cousins. And when you have people with conviction and clarity and confidence, and these things start to merge together, something really powerful starts to happen. They become one. They're not separate and distinct things, they're one. And when conviction and clarity and confidence come deep inside your heart, guess what you have? You have a very important moment in time that I call an inflection point. And now I'm not talking about an inflection point for an individual. I'm talking about an inflection point for a company. If every one of you here leaves with an increased sense of confidence and clarity and conviction, and by the way, they are a spinning circle. They feed each other. That's not linear. This thing is like constantly informing and spinning around each other. If each of you will go home and say, I know what happened in 2017 at the ASEA Global Convention. It was an inflection point. I think 5 years from now, people will be looking at this graph and say, hey, what happened right there? Oh, that's the 2017 Global Convention. That's when the game changed. Now, it's good enough for us to ask this question. I think you'll have people asking you the question. And unfortunately, in this industry, experience carries the day. So people that weren't here may never really understand what it's like to be here. But I would like to pose one last question in closing with you today that's different. And here's the question. Not so much what happened at the ASEA Global Convention. I want to know what happens after. What are you going to do? Are you going to let your blood pressure spike, your intellect increase, even get goosebumps a couple times in the last 2 days, and re-enter the atmosphere of your prior life with the same RPMs? Good answer. I've long said that at these events, there's something really interesting. Sometimes you're alone in a crowd. It might be when you're clapping in a dark room for someone you've never met, and in your heart you're saying, I should be on that stage. I should be up there. I have what it takes. You might be alone in a crowd with a journal, and you might flip it open and start rifling down your feelings. I'm doing this. I got this. I'm 47. It's time. I got more to give. I gotta do more. I can be more. You may be sitting in a crowded room all by yourself, reconnecting yourself with people and feelings, and then saying, I gotta go back and do this right. I loved hearing people say, we were here a year ago, standing now at a recognition dinner and said, we made a commitment 1 year ago that we were going there. I started my discussion by acknowledging and recognizing the Double the Difference people for a reason. They stayed true every single month, and so did I. and we coached and worked together, and several of them, you don't even know, walked across this stage and were recognized, and I in my heart said, they were my Double the Difference team, and they did it. So the question is, what happens after convention? I had a great mentor that said to me, Tyler, most people are vitamin D deficient. And I said, what? He said, most people will leave an event like this with an enormous deficiency of vitamin D. And then I looked at him and he said, and D stands for discipline. He said, most people will not make the decision at this event and then will not discipline themselves to turn around and take a world of strategic advantage and lever it for themselves. They'll write in their journals. They'll have strong emotions. But the gravity and the speed of their life and the orbit that they get back into is going to suck them back in. It takes enormous inertia, commitment, clarity, conviction, and confidence to say, not me, and not this year. The puck is on the ice, and it's going somewhere. And we can skate to it. We can even stand on it and slide with it. But we should not watch this moment pass by. This will be a collective inflection point for this entire company. My invitation to you is to make it your inflection point. Make the decision to unpack whatever it is about you that's kept you from reaching your full potential, now armed with this opportunity and these strategic advantages. I cannot say it enough. We are a strategically advantaged company. The word opportunity comes from the concept of an open port. The reason the word port is right in the center of opportunity is because the derivative of that word is tied to the concept of an open port. When the port was open and the tides were right, you could come in and execute commerce. You could come in and execute trade. You could come in and create an ally. You could come in and conquer. But when the tides were wrong and the timing and the winds were wrong, the port was not open. Master of human destinies am I. Fame, love, and fortune on my footsteps wait. Cities and fields I walk. I penetrate deserts and seas remote. And passing by hovel and mart or palace, soon or late, I knock unbidden once at every gate. If sleeping, wake. If feasting, rise. It is the hour of fate. And those who follow me reach every state that mortals desire and conquer every foe save death. But those who doubt or hesitate, will reach and seek me in vain because I answer not and I return no more. Who am I? I'm opportunity. I am opportunity. When the port is open, when opportunity knocks unbidden once at every gate, if sleeping, wake. If feasting, rise. It is the hour of fate. Let's take our strategic advantages and exploit them. Let's take our product and impact and remember that the most important time is now. The most important one is the one you're with, and the most important thing is to do good by that person. Let's simplify and clarify the surest sign of the truth. We have it. I have the binder and I have the science. We have everything we need. Take vitamin D supplements. Discipline yourself and go home, and do not let this opportunity, this open port, keep you from reaching your full potential. I honor my father for his vision and his belief and his confidence and commitment. It would not have happened if he didn't see it before everyone else. And my closing remark is thank you to you, and thank you to you, Dad. Let's go do this. It's time. Thank you very much.